Welcome to this video podcast in our Do Yourself Justice series, where we tell you about your legal rights in everyday situations. It's brought to you by award-winning legal firm Slee Blackwell Solicitors. My name's Danny Lawrence. I'm the legal everyman, which is to say somebody who doesn't know that much about the law, but is a typical customer for a firm like Slee Blackwell. And thankfully, I am joined by somebody representing that firm, lawyer Elizabeth Duncan, who is our resident expert for the day. Hi, Liz.
Hey, Danny.
Now, we're talking horses today, and we're specifically talking about buying them, leasing them, loaning them, sharing them. And you're not just a lawyer, but more importantly in the horse world, you're a horse mum, I think.
I am, yeah. So, well, as a child, I always desperately wanted a pony, but that wasn't to be. But now I've got a daughter, and a few years ago, she wanted to get into riding, and we've never been able to kind of look back. So, over the last few years, I've spent many hours of my life leaning on a fence by a sand school or stood in a field in the rain, watching her ride horses around. And you kind of in a sort of, if you can't beat them, join them vibe. I took some lessons myself. We've been on a horse riding holiday. So yeah, inadvertently, horse world is somewhere where I dwell quite a bit now.
Very impressed, because my own experience of horse riding is one occasion when I was on holiday in Mongolia, and let's not be unkind to the Mongolians, but they don't quite have the same regulations as us. They basically just let you get on a horse and have a go. And that's what I did. I was very uncomfortable. I was petrified about being ejected from the horse to an almost certain injury, and so I asked the guy who was taking this horse riding experience, please, can you hang on to the reins of my horse so that you can control it if it goes crazy? And thankfully, I did come away unscathed, but it was a memorable experience, because as we came to the end of the ride in the midst of a Mongolian steppe, the gentleman started singing a Mongolian folk song, and it was hanging on the air in its beautiful surroundings. And as he got to the end of it, the horse let out an almighty fart. So yeah, that's my my horse riding experience. Although with relevance to our legal conversation, we're going to be talking about the potential pitfalls of buying, leasing, loaning, and sharing a horse. We should say that your big legal speciality is personal injury, and there's obviously a discussion to be had about accidents and injury related to horses. We're not going to cover that in this episode. There's another episode of Do Yourself Justice where we're looking into that. Today we're looking at the legal implications of buying a horse and taking temporary ownership in a leasing or loaning scenario, and what are the responsibilities for buyer and seller in those situations. So let's start with buying a horse. It's a big ticket item, isn't it? We're familiar with the idea that when you're buying something very, very expensive, house or car, expensive furniture and so on, you go through certain checks and you have written agreements, and you probably enlist solicitors, certainly in the case of property. With a horse, there's an added dimension that it's a living, breathing being with its own personality, and I imagine that might cause complications.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, animals, they've got their own minds and all their own foibles, and they're all individuals. And buying a horse, it's not just buying a pet; it's buying a pet and then some. It's a big animal. It's got, it comes with a lot of responsibilities and things that you need in terms of stabling and farriers, vets, and all of that stuff.
Well, we've got a scenario here, a case study from Hannah, who says she's always dreamed of owning a horse, and she was looking for a calm and friendly horse that would be suitable for a novice. She found Claire, who was a reputable horse trader, advertising a horse named Bella, who was a 7-year-old mare, and that was advertised as perfect for beginners, and so would be perfect for light hacking. Hannah went ahead and bought Bella for £5,000, but after bringing Bella home, she quickly realised that she had a serious behavioural problem, the mare would frequently rear up, making riding impossible and leaving Hannah quite scared and frustrated. She took it to a vet who determined that this behavioural issue was not due to any previous medical issue, but probably due to a previous trauma or bad training, and was probably known about before the sale. So in short, Hannah believes that Claire failed to disclose something about the behaviour of the horse. What can she do in that situation?
Do you find people can have difficulties if they are buying a horse and it's not quite what they think it's going to be? So, for example, if a horse is bought on the understanding it's good for a novice or good for a child or something like that, and it isn't, that can obviously cause problems. And similarly, if it's sold as a sound horse, with no health problems, and that's not the case either, then that can cause some problems. So, if the seller knew about those issues and didn't say what the problems were with the horse as part of the buying and selling process, then a buyer might have some legal comeback there. So the tricky situation there for poor old Hannah. So because the horse was purchased from a commercial seller, she's got more rights than she would have if it had been a private sale. So where people, are exchanging horses for money, but as part of their hobby, more informally, then it's more difficult for the buyer. But where it's a commercial sale, Hannah would have protection under the Consumer Rights Act of 2015. So if we're saying, the horse was not as advertised, she can reject the horse, ask for a refund or a replacement if the seller would have such a thing, and look for her money back.
And if it's a private seller, as you say, and the first request for money back is refused, what could be the next step? What other rights does the buyer have?
To be able to essentially say the contract's been breached, the contract was based on a misrepresentation, the buyer would need to be able to prove that the seller knew that about the vices, about the behaviour, about the medical issues, and wasn't upfront and open about those in the buying and selling. So they would need to find some evidence of those problems. So in Hannah's case, is there previous footage of the behaviour of the mare rearing up? She could be looking at things like social media. There's videos of any competitions the horse may have been in. She could be speaking to if the horse had a previous owner before the seller. Was it having any of these problems there? She's already spoken to the vet, but would she be able to maybe get the veterinary records from the vet that the seller had the mare seen by, to see if those problems pre-existed? Because sometimes horses are, they can be sensitive. They're big animals, they're herd animals, and they're prey animals. So they can be, they can react differently in different environments. They can need time to settle in. They can react differently to different riders. So without that evidence, the buyer is in a really difficult position, because you can have a seller say, well, it was fine. It's having problems settling in, or maybe it doesn't like the yard it's on now, or something like that. It's all about evidence for people in that situation. In the absence of that evidence, or if it's just sort of feeling all a bit much, then the new owner, the buyer of that horse, could choose to sell it on, chalk it up to experience and hope to recoup some of their money. But it would be really important for them in that situation that they are honest and open in the advert to their potential buyers about the issues. Otherwise, they're going to find themselves, potentially in difficulty again.
So it's fair to say, I think, just as one person might like me, another person might not. So isn't it fair to assume that a horse might just like one rider and not like another? So if Hannah has been in an unlucky situation where the horse and her simply don't get on, and you can say no more than that, then there's not really much more to do other than sell it on. But the main message we should
sell it on, or try retraining. But Hannah's not an experienced rider, so that might not be something that she would be comfortable doing. There are professional trainers who might be able to help her, but really in her situation, if she can't return the horse, and this being a commercial seller, she it's got a few more rights. It might be a bit more straightforward. But if she can't return it, if she can't find any evidence of the as we were saying about the behaviour pre-existing the sale, then she's looking at selling it on, or keeping it and investing in training and hoping that she can sort of salvage a relationship with Bella there.
What about the veterinary reports? If a vet says, yes, I think there may be some sort of behavioural issue due to trauma, would going back through veterinary reports of the past help in any way?
It might do, yeah. It would very much depend on what's there. So it's going to be very much on a case-by-case basis. If those problems have previously existed and the horse has been seen by a vet and the vet has noted it down, then yeah, absolutely, that would be helpful. But unfortunately, if it is an issue with a horse, it has come from sort of dodgy training or trauma or something like that, it may be that previous owner hasn't had the horse seen, and that evidence may simply not exist or be impossible to trace.
Let's move on to leasing or loaning a horse. And the first thing I want to ask here is, if I'm an owner of a horse, why would I choose to lease or loan it rather than sell it?
So a horse is a really big, it can be a lifetime, it's a lifestyle for some people, and a horse can be around for a really long time. We could be looking for 20 or 30 years of your horse's life with you. So sometimes, life happens. Maybe someone has an illness or has to, a job contract that will take them away for a spell, or they have a baby or something like that. There could be a spell, there could be a reason in their lives where they're not able to give the horse the time and attention that it needs. And but they don't want to sell their horse. They still want to come back to it. They still want to keep it. But they'll need somebody to do the riding and exercising and all that side of things for that sort of period of time, which can be 6 months, 12 months, 5 years, whatever is appropriate.
So a seller or an owner might go down the route of leasing or loaning. What's the difference between those two things, leasing and loaning?
Okay, so leasing is what we've probably done. That's probably what you did in Mongolia. You paid a fee to a person for a use of a horse. Oh, very casual then. So yeah, leasing is what we might have done then if anyone's gone pony trekking, or they've had a lesson in a riding school for half an hour or something like that. You've paid a fee to use the horse for a specific period of time. You don't have any responsibilities towards it in terms of upkeep or anything like that. Here's the money, and that's that. Loaning is a bit different, because with a loan arrangement, the borrower of the horse takes on all the responsibilities and expenses associated with the horse's upkeep. So it's almost like being an owner for a period of time. So they would take on things like the veterinary fees, feed, livery, farrier, all of that kind of stuff. There's usually not a fee paid to the owner of the horse in a loan. There can be, but that's a bit more unusual. They would, like I say, take on the expenses of the horse for a period of time.
It seems to me that whatever the arrangement, there's going to have to be a written agreement about what's going to happen. So what would be covered in such an agreement?
So with leasing, our pony trekking example, the written agreement is going to be pretty brief. You'll probably give some kind of information about your abilities, your weight, have you ridden before, if so, when, how, what, how much, and all of that sort of stuff. And then they'll get you to probably sign, if you're in the UK, a disclaimer to say, you've given all this information, you've had all these warnings, pretty easy, couple of pages, done. With a loan, it's going to be more, because your responsibilities are more onerous. It's somebody's property that you're going to be sort of taking ownership of for a period of time. So you want to be absolutely sure that both parties know where they are. So a loan contract is really sensible. The British Horse Society has some template agreements on its website, which are a great starting point, and you can always have a solicitor check them over. You'll want to make sure that both parties know the duration of the loan, if there's any arrangements in terms of money changing hands, exactly what the person loaning the horse, or borrowing the horse rather, is responsible for in terms of veterinary care and everything like that. If there's any particular requirements in terms of it staying on a particular livery yard, that needs to be covered. If it's got any issues with health or needs particular sorts of feed, that would need to be covered. And what's the horse allowed to be used for? If I've if I'm a loanee of your horse, are you happy for me to lease it out and take people pony trekking on it? Are you happy for me to ride it in competition or not? So all of those things need to be set out in a contract so everybody knows exactly where they are. And don't forget, if either side want to end that loan agreement before the sort of planned end, life happens, doesn't it? How does that happen? So yeah, everyone needs to know exactly where they are, and that will minimise future problems.
And what about the behavioural stuff that we were talking about, where it's a buy-sell relationship? Obviously, if it's a leasing scenario and I'm very uncomfortable, I can say at any point, I'm really not enjoying this. I don't like this horse. I don't agree with its taste in music. I can just get off and go if it's a lease. If it's a loan, I imagine it might be a bit more complicated. Would that have to be covered in the agreement too?
Yeah, I think that would be very sensible to cover in the agreement. If it's known behaviour, then you can set it out in the agreement so that everyone knows again where they are. If it's new behaviour that kind of comes along or develops, then again, cover that in terms of if I want to end the agreement, who might be responsible for any sort of training or anything like that. But yeah, if those template agreements I referred to on the British Horse Society webpage are a really great starting point to try and make sure that all eventualities are covered so that nobody's stuck in an awkward position of, well, I can't get my horse back now and it's the end of the period of time, or gosh, this whole thing has fallen apart, it's an absolute nightmare and I need to not be looking after this horse for the next 2 years, just so that everybody has got clarity and understands exactly what their responsibilities are.
And for you as the horse mum paying for your daughter's riding lessons, what agreement is that? Is that a leasing arrangement?
Yeah, a short-term lease for an hour.
And there's a fourth scenario that we haven't talked about. We've had buying and selling, leasing, loaning. There's also sharing a horse, which baffles me slightly. What is sharing a horse? What are the legal considerations there?
Yeah, a new one for me as well. So a share it tends to be a bit less formal. It's not as formal as a loan, and it's not quite the same setup as a hire or a lease. So a share is where somebody still owns their horse, but they want someone to share the work, and the person who doing the sharing would like to be able to ride a bit more, but maybe they're not in a position to own their own horse. So the parties sort of come together and come up with an arrangement that suits everyone. So for example, if you can do yard duties on Monday, Wednesday and Friday, then you can ride this horse on those same days or whatever. Or if there's quite often a sum of money involved as well, like maybe if you pay for the shoes and do yard duties twice a week or something like that, then you can ride on this many days. So the idea is it sort of shares the burden of the horse owner, and the person who would love to have a horse but can't gets to do a bit more riding and a bit more looking after a horse.
And all of our discussion so far has been from the point of view of the buyer or customer, if you like. Let's just look from the other side as well. For the seller, what are the legal responsibilities? What does a seller have to do when selling or creating another arrangement of the type we've been talking about, leasing and loaning, etc.?
Yeah, so it's sort of, if we flip it, you want to be protected if you're selling a horse. So it's probably sensible to maybe get it vet checked so that you can declare if there's any medical problems, and just being honest and upfront really about any behavioural issues so that the horse is sold as seen, and there can be no comeback. If you know it's got a tendency to, like spook at carrier bags or something, say that. And then when your buyer's like, well, this is a nightmare, it spooks at every carrier bag, you can say, well, yes, I know. And you bought it on that basis with your eyes wide open. So the issues come if someone intentionally misrepresents the horse. This horse is perfect for a novice, and it's not. It's a sharp and spooky, a challenging ride. So yeah, honesty, openness, transparency, invite the buyers to come and check out the horse, have a test visit, a test drive kind of thing, and that should head off most issues at the pass.
And a final question, speaking to you as a lawyer and a representative of Slee Blackwell, when would I be approaching a solicitor in all of this? It seems to me that a lot of these things must surely be fairly small amounts, and it might not need to go to a solicitor. When does it start to become a solicitor matter?
So, I mean, you can approach a solicitor at any time. The issue you're going to find is if a claim is worth less than £10,000. So the value of the contract, the value of the horse is less than £10,000. Any legal action would end up allocated to the small claims track. And that means that you can't recover your legal fees from the other side, from the whoever it is you're suing about this horse. And so that means that getting formal legal advice may end up costing more than you get back, which is a pretty, not ideal way forwards. So people can, they can bring a small claims case themselves. There's money claims online, or bearing in mind, the courts are quite sort of slow at present. They can look at things like more informal mediation or arbitration, and things of that nature to hopefully get things sort of resolved without needing to go down the court route.
Well, we called this episode How Not to Be Taken for a Ride, and I think you've done a great job, Liz, of guiding us through some of the considerations of buying, selling, leasing, loaning, and sharing a horse. Thank you for that. So would you like to leave us with any final recommendations or a place to go for further information?
A great starting point is the British Horse Society. They've got a website with really lots of template documents and resources, and that's bhs.org.uk. Another helpful thing to do might be to either, whether you're buying privately or commercially, ask for references from other buyers, and you can look on things like forums, social media, and so on. Because if it's a bit of a dodgy seller, you're quite possibly not the first person to be to run afoul of them.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you to you for watching or listening. If you found this episode of Do Yourself Justice particularly interesting or useful, please do share it, like it, leave a comment about some of the other things you might want us to discuss on another episode. We do have another episode about accident and injury related to horses, so look out for that one too. In the meantime, thank you for joining us today, and remember to do yourself justice.
Slee Blackwell Solicitors, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and looking after you.